Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the MTG Homerow Podcast. This is episode 3 of the MTG Homerow Podcast, and this is going to be about the Gates deck that I have. So there's a limited number of episodes that I can do about decks that I have in paper, but this is one I'm going to start with. This might not be the deck that I've had for the longest, but this is the deck I think that's had the most iterations and the most drastic changes to it. So you can see this is the MTG Goldfish visual view of the deck, and take a quick glance at the stats and the cards that are in the deck. This particular deck list has the specific card versions that I run in the deck, which is fun for me. And then on the podcast, what we'll be doing is going over the Substack article that's going out, and then we'll go over the Goldfish deck list and primer. So this is the entire history of the Gates deck, from Group Hug to Pure Gates and beyond. Like I said, this is the deck that I think I've had for the longest, that's gotten the most iterations. And the way that makes sense to me is to go over the lifespan of the deck, from its conception to its current build, and maybe what I'm thinking about for the future and everything in between. The other episodes of the podcast, I specifically was trying to make quick and snappy. I started with a 10-minute deck tech, and then the next one I kept around 30 minutes. But for this one, I'm going to go over this whole article and the whole deck list in its current form. And I think it'll be a little bit longer. I'm not going to rush. I'm just going to keep it laid back and see how I feel about the different forms for the podcast. So you can let me know in the comments on YouTube or on Substack or wherever you're listening in the future about what form you prefer. I think the podcast could have several different forms, or depending on the content, whatever form fits is going to work. But for this one, what feels right is just to keep it laid back and not rush through it. And for the Substack portion, I think the voice will be more in the written voice that I use for the articles. And I'm sort of going to read it more than talk about the article that I just wrote. I'll read the article out loud, be an audio version of the article, and then we'll go over the Gates deck, and maybe I'll do some more speculating and get into the nitty-gritty of the card choices and potential includes, things like that. So without further ado, the entire history of the Gates deck, from Group Hug to Pure Gates and beyond. Always start at the beginning. Origin. The inspiration for this deck dates back to the days when we had weekly Commander nights around the time of original Innistrad. That's when I started playing. One of my favorite cards to see hit the table was Deus of Fealty, which I wrote in here incorrectly, so I get to edit that live on the podcast. Good stuff. Dominus of Fealty. That makes more sense. When I was looking up this card, I was like, Deus of Fealty, it doesn't make sense because it steals things, but Dominus makes a little more sense, which I will use as a quick tangent right at the beginning of the podcast. Quick tangent, just to mention that one of the ideas that I have for the podcast is an etymology series. So if you have any words that show up in Magic that you would like to know the etymological origins of, let me know in the comments and we will add it to the list. It's a huge list of interesting words that are on Magic cards. So just let me know. Very quick tangent. Back to the article. Dominus of Fealty is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hybrid blue and red mana for 4/4 Spirit Avatar with flying, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep you may gain control of target permanent until end of turn. If you do, untap it and it gains haste until end of turn. And the flavor text says, nothing is truly your own. It is his whether you know it or not, from the Seer's Parable. And the art is by Kev Walker. So I love this card very much, and I've never played it. I've never owned it. So that's how much I like the card, though. Even though I've never played it, never owned it, just the fact that it exists inspired this entire deck. And hopefully someday I find a good spot for it. But this card was sweet and splashy and had my favorite creature card type, Avatar. So that's one of the most important parts of the origins of this deck is avatars. I cracked a Sarah Avatar in M13. The art and flavor text were and still are so gripping to me. Sarah Avatar is 4 white for a star creature avatar at Mythic. It says, Sarah Avatar's power and toughness are each equal to your life total. When Sarah Avatar is put into a graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into its owner's library. Sarah isn't dead. She lives on through me. And the art depicts a blindfolded sort of samurai sword-wielding avatar atop a meditation pedestal, perhaps, overlooking a setting sun. It's very beautiful. So I became determined to build Avatar Tribal. And then Gate crash landed with a huge avatar for each color, and I was fully inspired. So Gate crash brought about Luminate, Primordial, Diluvian, Sepulchral, Molten, and Sylvan Primordial. Then I saw these sleeves at Mox Mania in Madison, Wisconsin. I got the sleeves knowing that they would someday be filled with Avatar Tribal. So it's these Legion brand sleeves with rainbow color bars and a unicorn with a sunburst lens flare coming off the unicorn horn and some clouds. And I love these sleeves. The quality of the sleeves is I would give them a 3, but the art I gave a 11. So they balanced out for a long time. Those aren't the sleeves that are on the deck now. I just changed them because they're more or less just marked because they all split in different ways. So if I were to look through the deck, I'd be able to tell which cards were which, I think. So they got that bad that I felt like I just had to change them. So Avatar Tribal came with some challenges of its own, unique challenges. The first things that came to mind for Avatar Tribal were, 1, I wanted to be 5 colors because there's all sorts of avatars and they're all so cool. 2, the lands were going to be an issue. So any 5 color mana base is an issue, especially at budget. And 3, the creatures themselves have a high mana value, so the curve is definitely going to be top heavy. My solutions to these 3 problems were, 1, need to find a good 5 color commander. 2, I'll use Gates as the land base, most budget way to run 5 colors. And 3, I will cheat them into play instead of worrying about casting them. So that was how I thought I'd be able to build Avatar Tribal. The first commander I had was none other than Corona the False God. Quote unquote, errata to be an avatar. Corona fit the theme well and seemed to be the closest thing to an avatar lord. Corona False God is 1 and Wooburg for a 5/5 legendary avatar with haste and says, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player untaps Corona, False God, and gains control of it. Whenever Corona attacks, creatures of the type of your choice get +3/+3 until end of turn. So I knew this wasn't the greatest card ever. It's risky, but adding an additional 3 power and toughness to these already rather big avatars after they have their initial enter the battlefield effect seemed hopefully good enough. Didn't know. The next glaring issues were that avatars are mana intensive in both color and mana value. So then here's just some of the avatars in mana value order, starting with Shadow of Mortality and going down, and you can see in this little screen capture that there are a lot of avatars that are more than 5 mana and have multiple colored mana symbols in their casting cost. For instance, Progenitus is 2 of each. And a lot of the top end avatars have like 6 generic mana and then double colored mana. So that's 8 mana. And some of the other ones have 3 colored mana symbols, 1 of each different mana symbol, and things like that. So there's some 3 color ones. There's some 3 of the same color ones. There's ones that have Wooburg in the casting cost, and then there's a bunch of avatars like the original Dominus of Fealty that have a bunch of hybrid mana. So all really hard to cast spells. Gates felt like the most budget way to run a 5-color mana base. They're really, really bad, but I had an idea for that too. The best Gate card of them all solved everything. Gate to the Ether. Gate to the Ether is 6 mana for an artifact that says at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player reveals the top card of his or her library. If it's an artifact, creature, enchantment, or land card, that player may put it into play. Gate to the Ether. I was enjoying Planes Chase games at the time, so I leaned even harder into the theme with cards like the Blue Braids, Kami of the Crescent Moon, Rites of Flourishing, Kinderos and Tear of Meletus, Upwelling, and Howling Mine were some other notable includes for a truly wild game. Also, I would say Wild Evocation was one of my favorite cards in this Group Hug Chaos Plane Chase type deck. I remember describing the deck like that in its early iterations, that it was like Plane Chase the deck, which turns out to be more like a Chaos Group Hug deck, a little both. The next piece to the puzzle was clones. I was hoping that all the Group Hug would cause everyone's biggest creatures to hit the board, and I would have the clones to choose the best of the best for myself. These are clones that are still in the deck to this day. So still in the deck, its current form, still run Clever Impersonator, which can be a copy of any non-land permanent on the battlefield. Stunt Double, which has Flash, which is nice. Any creature on the battlefield. Cackling Counterpart, similarly, is an instant, which is nice and flexible with Flashback, and can be a copy of target creature you control. Evil Twin is 2 blue-black for a 0/0 shapeshifter that says you may have Evil Twin enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except for it gains blue-black, tap it, destroy target creature with the same name as this creature. So, of course, targeting a commander with this is pretty mean, pretty convenient, mean, however you want to see it. So Evil Twin is pretty sweet, I think, in a game of Commander. And then Clone Legion still in the deck as a huge splashy spell. 7 blue for sorcery that says for each creature target player controls, put a token on the battlefield that's a copy of that creature. So you can choose yourself, which is pretty sweet. But you can choose any player that you can target. So I really like Clone Legion. It's just super fun. So that was the way the deck ran for a while. Avatar Tribal, Group Hug with a Gates mana base. The deck didn't have much of a win con, turns out. I thought that the avatars would be enough, but they often were at a standstill with another entire deck that was played for free with all the Group Hug. I definitely decked myself with a standstill on the board, which was taking up 2 full playmats worth of space with the final 2 players having their entire deck laid out. And that's the last time I remember playing the deck in this iteration. Next, Joda Archmage Eternal. Krona stayed the commander all the way from Return to Ravnica until Dominaria. I was considering during this time getting a Morophon. Morophon came out between then sometime. But the reduction that Morophon gives is for white, blue, black, red, and green. And it doesn't really help cast the avatars that have 2 of the same color in their casting cost, or multiples of the same color, or don't include one of those colors, or don't have that much generic mana. So it didn't really work with avatars. But with the release of Dominaria in 2018, a new 5-color commander was brought to the helm. The deck still had a bunch of spells that cost 6 or more mana, 5 or more mana, really. So Joda offering even a small discount or a mana fix, quote unquote, seemed perfectly fine. So Joda Archmage Eternal is 1 blue, red, white for a 4/3 legendary creature human wizard with flying that says you may pay Wooburg rather than pay the mana cost for spells that you cast. And it says, Chronicles across the ages describe Joda. They likely refer not to one mage, but to a family or an arcane title. Arcole, Argivian Scholar. So perhaps this is, as this deck has been, only a title. Only a Joda is just the current iteration of a greater idea of Joda, much like the Gates deck is always in flux. Then came the age of Golos. Golos is 5 generic mana for a 3/5. Golos Tireless Pilgrim is 5 generic mana for a 3/5. Legendary artifact creature with the type Scout, a rare from M20 that says, when Golos Tireless Pilgrim enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a land card, put that card onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle your library, and has an ability of 2 white, blue, black, red, green. Exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn without paying their mana costs. I opened a promo Golos in my M20 pre-release pack, and I knew Gates was going to be amazing from now on. Golos even fit the free stuff theme and the lands theme. It was the perfect commander for a Gates deck. It was fun while it lasted. Alas, Golos is super cracked and probably banned for forever. Maybe there'll be another version of Golos. I hope to see Golos again in the future. I love Golos. I think it's just so cool. But so busted. So broken. Really good in Gates, though. I think it's fun It's so fun. I hope they bring Golos back. Scout Tribal, perhaps. And that's all I wrote about the Age of Golos. You know, it was the perfect card for Golos, but it was running about the same with the group hug and the avatars, not really able to finish games out and stuff, but just such a fun card. I love Golos. Back to Jodah. So Golos got banned, and Jodah became the commander for the deck again. So Jodah is back at the helm since Golos was banned. So since then and up till now, it's been Jodah, Archmage Eternal. There have been other 5-color commanders that look really sweet, but Jodah does help me jam big mana spells, and it is a 4/3 flyer for 4. I won't go into the other possible commanders for the deck right now, but there's a lot of cool 5-color commanders now. There wasn't for a while, but I still like Jodah the most for now. These are some of the best spells to cast with Jodah in no particular order. So Progenitus, Sepulchral Primordial is still in the deck. Nezahal, Seagate Restoration is really sweet to cast with Jodah. Muldrotha, Protector of the Crown, even though it's just 1 mana reduction, it allows you to get it on the board. Dune Blast, Ingarrook's Wake, Sunbird's Invocation, Grave Betrayal, Overwhelming Forces, and Clone Legion. So having all those cards in the same deck is tough, but being able to cast them for 5 mana is good enough in my book. We'll get there. Muldrotha was the most recent addition until I recently got a Seagate Restoration, which fits the Gates theme, of course. From this era onward, the Gates deck more or less functions as a home for the biggest, splashiest, hard-to-cast spells that end up cracking for pre-release or that I just have to get for the deck in the form of singles. And then if you can think of any splashy spells that you want to see in the deck, please do leave a comment. I would like to see them and consider them for the deck. Anything that you like to cast with a discount with Jodah. Anything 5 or more mana that your favorite spells that cost 5 or more, I want to know what they are. So please leave a comment. The current build, Gates theme. So recently, I wanted to change the deck up because it wasn't winning games. It was causing a bunch of non-games because of the group hug theme, where I had to give a big disclaimer before I played it. I felt like, I'm going to play this chaos group hug deck, and maybe people were into it, maybe not. Sometimes I'd play it as like the last game of the day, but it was just such a long game it turned out to be because I couldn't finish it up after casting a bunch of stuff for free. Everyone was casting things for free, so it just was too symmetrical. And just a few weeks ago, I rearranged all my commander decks. A lot of cards were swapped between decks, which was very convenient and fun for me to find new homes for my favorite cards. And for sure, all the mana bases were fine-tuned, so either the amount of lands were adjusted or the colors or added some better lands or whatever. Did all that recently. And the Gates deck got a big overhaul, including way more cards that had to do with Gates. So at this point in time, I think I'm going to switch over to the MTG Goldfish deck primer and description. I'll scroll down a little bit till the end of the Substack article. Oh yeah, we'll come back for this. We'll come back for the mana and the outro. But now for the current build of the Gates deck. It runs a little hot. Not a budget deck anymore. I guess it was never probably much of a budget deck, but it's $437 now. Amulet of Vigor I picked up a while ago because it just keeps going up and it just goes so well in Gates. Amulet of Vigor really makes Gates amazing, as well as Gone Gate similarly says Gates you control enter the battlefield untapped. I filled out all the gates. Some of the gates from Baldur's Gate are more expensive than I'd expect, I guess. Just Baldur's Gate's $1 something. Citadel Gate's like $3. Like for lands that are pretty bad, you know. Some of them are just a little expensive, I guess. They're not too bad. And then there's Guild Summit. Way of the Thief is a good one. That says it's 3 and a blue for an enchantment aura that is enchanted creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2. Enchanted creature is unblockable as long as you control a gate. So really, really bad card, common from Gate Crash, but it's super on theme, and it goes really well on a Gatebreaker Ram, for instance, or a Gate Colossus, an 8 and unblockable. For 12 that would be a 10/10 unblockable. For 12 mana, not very good. But Gate Colossus also said the spell costs 1 less to cast for each gate you control. So if you have 8 gates, it's free. And it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less anyways. And whenever a gate enters the battlefield under your control, you may put Gate Colossus from your graveyard on top of your library. So, you know, it goes in gates. I think Gate Colossus goes in gates. And it felt good to make those changes. Really needed to get a 9 Fingers Keen, which is the gate legendary creature that only has 3 colors for some reason. Human rogue, but goes well in the 99. I'm not sure I would want this to be the commander anyways, but it's 1 black, blue, green, 1 black, green, blue for a 4/4 legendary creature human rogue with menace and ward, pay 9 life. Whenever 9 Fingers Keen deals combat to damage to a player, look at the top 9 cards of your library. You may put a gate card from among them onto the battlefield. Then, if you control 9 or more gates, put the rest into your hand. Otherwise, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Sorry, the text is small. I'll zoom in a little bit. So, 4 mana, 4/4 menace ward, pay 9 life. Pretty hard to target. But having 9 gates is a huge ask. But by the time you get there, you know, pretty good payoff. So I included just about all the gates decks. There's an angel gate. I can't remember. There's an angel that gains life for the number of gates. That one's not in here. But there is Gates Ablaze as a board wipe, and Guild Summit is one of the best cards in the deck, I think. When it's a 3 mana, 2 and a blue for an enchantment that says when Guild Summit enters the battlefield, you may tap any number of untapped gates you control. Draw a card for each gate tapped this way. Whenever a gate enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. So, pretty good. But I'll get into the deck primer and description. Just went ahead and used the checklist, Homer's checklist, for the deck primer and description. So, just went over the whole history. So, if you happen to want to see the Substack article that will be coming out, and then, like I said, Joda, still the commander, and my personal favorite suite of cards in the deck is Spirit Mantle, Darksteel Plate, Way of the Thief, Protector of the Crown, Guardian of the Gateless, and Gatebreaker Ram. So the Spirit Mantle says enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has protection from creatures. So it's only 1 and a white for an enchantment aura. It's pretty efficiently costed for protection from creatures. That means if you put Spirit Mantle on Protector of the Crown, it's not going to take any damage from creatures. And Protector of the Crown is 5 and a white for a 2/5 creature giant soldier that says when Protector of the Crown enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. All damage that would be dealt to you is dealt to Protector of the Crown instead. So any damage that's coming from a creature is not going to affect Protector of the Crown. It's just not going to take the damage at all. Then you're not going to be taking any damage either. And then Darksteel Plate would make Protector of the Crown indestructible. So you're going to get the Monarch, and you're going to keep the Monarch, and you're not going to take damage from creatures, or if you give Protector of the Crown indestructible, you're not going to be taking damage from non-creature spells either, because the damage will get redirected to Protector of the Crown, and then no matter how much damage it takes, as long as it keeps indestructible, it will not die. And then Guardian of the Gateless, in a similar way, says it's 4 and a white for a 3/3 creature angel with flying. Guardian of the Gateless can block any number of creatures, and whenever Guardian of the Gateless blocks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature it's blocking. So, of course, having an indestructible creature that can block any number of creatures is going to be really good. And then having it get protection from creatures, also really good. And it pumps itself as it blocks. So it's like the best blocker of all time with one of these spells on it. And Way of the Thief goes really well on Gatebreaker Ram. Making this Gatebreaker Ram unblockable can be quite good, I think. And it gets a little buff right away. We're likely to have a gate. Quite likely to have a gate. There's all the gates in the deck. So you can build yourself a little Gatebreaker Ram Voltron thing too, potentially, with Spirit Mantle or Way of the Thief, or even Darksteel Plate, and cause some tough blocks, because Gatebreaker Ram is 2 and a green for a 2/2 creature sheep, and says Gatebreaker Ram gets +1/+1 for each gate you control. As long as you control 2 or more gates, Gatebreaker Ram has vigilance and trample. So very nice to have it get vigilance, and the trample is definitely going to get through in the end. If you have, say, 9+ gates, it's going to be an 11/11 with 9 gates. And then 13/13 with Way of the Thief, 13/13 unblockable Gatebreaker Ram on turn, whatever, way late in the game. I think that could finish things out. So that's the hope. I think Way of the Thief goes fine on Gate Colossus as well. 10/10 unblockable. Then the lands portion. This Gates deck plays all 18 gates. We got the 10 Guildgates for the guilds, and then 8 gate cards from Battle for Baldur's Gate. Or Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. I think that's what it's called. So here's all the gates, and Maze's End, of course. Maze's End enters the battlefield tapped. It taps for a generic mana. I think it taps for a colorless mana, technically. And then you can pay 3 and tap it, return Maze's End to its owner's hand, search your library for a gate card, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. If you control 10 or more gates with different names, you win the game. So that's our Secret I Win card. Of course, not much of a secret. We'll see that at the very end. And the latest gates are really, really good for the deck. Gone Gate says, gates you control enter the battlefield untapped. It taps for colorless or taps to add 1 mana of any color that a gate you control could produce. Basilisk Gate, 2 tap it, or taps for a colorless, and then has 2 tap. Target creature gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of gates you control. Activate only as a sorcery, so you can make a very large creature potentially. Baldur's Gate is a legendary gate with that taps for colorless and 2 and tap it. Add X mana of any 1 color where X is the number of other gates you control. So you can kind of fix yourself a little bit. Color fix. Heap Gate taps for colorless, has 1 and tap it, add 1 mana of any color, so you can just filter inefficiently. Or 1, tap it, tap an untapped gate you control, create a treasure token. So this is something I think that I would like to have at really any point in the game, because you can be holding up a little bit of mana, maybe just 2 mana, and then making a treasure at the end of the turn. There's not that many instants in the deck, to be totally honest. But, you know, if you happen to have any sort of mana sink, one of the few instant speed cards in the deck, or anything else that you could be leaving mana open for, or just some extra mana, it's a really nice way to use extra mana with Heap Gate. And then Black Dragon, Citadel, Manor, and Sea Gate are all the new mana gates that enter the battlefield tapped and choose a color other than the color that they are listed to tap for, and it adds that mana or 1 mana of the chosen color. Kind of hard to keep track of in paper, but, you know, I think once you decide, you just end up thinking of it as a guild gate. That's how I do it in my brain anyways. So if I say Black Dragon Gate's going to make white, then now it's an Orzhov Guild Gate, you know. If Citadel Gate makes black, it's all, you know, that would also be an Orzhov Guild Gate in my head as I'm tapping it from mana. There's some other lands in the deck, like Opulent Palace, that I would obviously want to be a Triome, because you can fetch it as a forest and you can cycle it. But I just have the Opulent Palace for now. And there are 40 lands in the deck, which is pretty heavy on the lands, but Maze's End enters the battlefield tapped and taps for colorless. All these like Heap Gate and the other utility gates, I guess, all tap for colorless, so definitely heavier on the lands. Amulet of Vigor, like I said at the top, is one of the most important cards, and Gone Gate is likely going to be your gate tutor target. There's quite a few cards that let you search for gates, specifically because Gone Gate is so good, but, you know, Basilisk Gate could help you finish out the game. Maybe Baldur's Gate could really fix your mana if you are in a position where you are missing a way to make mana. You could Desperation search Baldur's Gate with cards like this is the reason why I like the deck in this form too. because you're really not going to play District Guide anywhere else, which is 2 and a green for a 2/2 Elf Scout Tribal. When District Guide enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card or gate card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So you're really not going to play a District Guide anywhere else. I'm not even sure you should play District Guide here, but getting Gone Gate turns on all your gates right away, makes them into untapped dual lands, and that's really good. So I'll jump through some hoops to make that happen. Don't have any ways to search out the Amulet of Vigor, but more ways than that to search out any gate. So Nine Fingers kind of can find gates off the top, but Open the Gates at just 1 mana can let you get that Gone Gate really early. Same then would go for Circuitous Route, being able to find 2 gates, and I thought there was another one, but I can't think of it now. But another gate specific card is Greenside Watcher. Really bad. 2 mana, 2/1 Elf Druid that can tap to untap target gate. Really bad card, but goes well here. Yeah, I'm not seeing the other gate-specific tutor that I was thinking of, but that's probably it. Next section is ramp. So it's maybe a little heavy on the ramp even. There's 14 cards that I would consider real ramp in the deck right now, and then also ways to search those lands that I just was talking about, like District Guide. So might be a little heavy on the ramp. The Farseek, well, the Cultivate and Kodama's Reach are a little risky. I only have one of each basic, so I would prefer one of those at least to be a Nature's Lore maybe, or just a different card altogether. The Thought Vessel, not really necessary in my experience with the deck so far. I haven't come across that many ways to draw and keep more than 7 cards in my hand. The Hour Promise is not the best ramp, but it's 2 of any kind of land card. It does say to put them onto the battlefield tapped, but we're hoping that one of those is Gone Gate, and then they won't come into play tapped. Then the Gone Gate will, and the other one won't, I think. Then if you control 3 or more deserts, create 2/2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So that's just not happening. There's 0 deserts in the deck. Chromatic Lantern, obviously really good for mana fixing in this deck. Maybe these creature-based mana ramp could get swapped out. That's what I'm thinking. And, Kaneos and Tira of Miletus kind of counts as ramp. I guess it's probably more specifically a group hug card, but it ramps you a little bit. It can ramp you. Next section is, let's see here. So depending on which direction the deck goes in the future, some ramp cards might get swapped out. Nearly goes without saying that land ramp will stay for lands theme. Maybe Slimefoot Survey, Herd Migration, some new ones from Dominaria United, and then creature based for more creature focused deck with the Great Henge. So there's quite a few creatures in the deck. There are 25 creatures, so if the few extra ramp cards turn into creatures, then maybe the Great Henge is better. If I want to go a different direction, maybe some of the artifact ramp could get turned into more land ramp and do more of a land theme, so who knows. Bring Delight is the only real tutor. It's 3 green, blue for a sorcery with Converge that says search your library for a creature, instant, or sorcery card with mana value less than or equal to the number of colors of mana spent to cast this spell. Exile that card, then shuffle. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. So there's plenty of 5-color or 5 mana instant sorcery or creature cards in the deck. I would say Gonti's a fun one. Maybe even Kaneos and Tiro is fun. They're 2/8, pretty good blocker. Shalai's really good, giving you hexproof and all your other creatures hexproof, and being able to pay 4 green to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control can help the team grow pretty good late in the game. Stunt Double and the clones, Clever Impersonator, can be really good depending. Twilight Prophet I really like a lot. Lets you get Guardian of the Gateless and Tatiova. So that's sort of the top end of the creature base that you can fetch with Bring to Light. Tutor onto the battlefield, or tutor and then cast without paying the mana cost. Instants and sorceries, Harmonize for card draw. I suppose Rite of Replication, you could just hit the 1. I don't know why you'd be ouring of Promising, but I suppose you could. You can Reforge a Soul and wheel everyone. That's pretty fun. Urban Evolution could draw you some cards. I'm not sure why you tutor for card draw, but you could do it. Or tutor for ramp, but you could do it. Villainous Wealth, not very good with Bring to Light. Keep that in mind. Gates Ablaze would be good, potentially, with Bring to Light. So there's definitely some targets. Can't hit artifacts, but you can hit enchantments, right? Instant, sorcery, or creature. So yeah, no enchantments, but Gates Ablaze, Reforge the Soul, Harmonize, even some pretty good. Chaos Warp, Cackling Counterpart, all good targets for Bring to Light. So even though there's only one tutor, it's pretty powerful. You can see it in other formats in the Niv to Light decks to see it at its sort of full potential, I would say. Next section is card draw. So the card draw in this deck is what I would call unconventional. The Reality Chip, Gonti, Kaneos and Tiro, Nine Fingers, Twilight Prophet, Tatiova, Nezahal, Villainous Wealth, Reforge the Soul, Urban Evolution, Seagate Restoration, super expensive. Overwhelming Forces, also super expensive. Temporal Aperture, Guild Summit, and Sunbird's Invocation. I count all those as unconventional card draw. Overwhelming Forces being a good one. Good example. 6 black for a sorcery that says destroy all creatures target opponent controls. Draw a card for each creature destroyed this way. It's, a very expensive spell that might not have any good targets if the board got wiped otherwise, or people just don't have that many creatures, but it can be really good too. Like Gonti isn't really card draw, but it's kind of card draw. And the Reality Chip has a bunch of hoops to run through. You can cast it for 1 and a blue for 0/4 legendary artifact creature equipment jellyfish. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. As long as the Reality Chip is attached to a creature, you may play lands and cast spells from the top of your library. And it has reconfigure 2 and a blue. So you have to reconfigure it. It's 5 mana to get this effect going, and then it's on a creature, reconfigured onto a creature. But being able to play lands off the top of your library. If you have Tatiova or Azusa Lost But Seeking, then Reality Chip becomes really, really good. And then being able to cast spells from the top of your library with Joda is also really good because you can run into this sort of Seagate Restoration on the top or Overwhelming Forces, whatever, on the top of your library, be able to cast them if Reality Chip is reconfigured. So I really like Reality Chip. It's kind of a long way around, but that's okay. Nezahal is really powerful, I think. Which is a big splashy spell, one of my favorite of the Elder Dinosaurs. And then Temporal Aperture and Sunbird's Invocation and Villainous Wealth, I guess I'd say, are the leftovers from in Kaneos and Tiro, from the Group Hug Chaos days. Temporal Aperture, one of the best ones, is a 2-mana artifact with ability 5, tap it, shuffle your library, and reveal the top card until end of turn. As long as that card remains on top of your library, you may play the card as though it were in your hand without paying its mana cost. If the spell has X in it, in the casting cost, X is 0, so also really bad with Villainous Wealth, but it's the only X card in the deck. And it's just so fun being able to pay 5 generic mana in the Gaze deck if you're having mana troubles. Even if you're not having mana troubles, it might be the best thing to do if you don't have any cards in your hand. That's why I included it in the card draw slot. If it's a land, you can play it. It doesn't say you can cast it. But you can play it without paying its casting cost. So very specific wording that makes it so that you are able to play lands off the top or cast spells without paying their mana cost for 5 mana. So there's a lot of good hits for it. And then Sunbird's Invocation says it is 5 and a red for an enchantment that says, whenever you cast a spell from your hand, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is that spell's mana value. You may cast a spell with mana value X or less from among cards revealed this way without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So you do have to cast them from your hand, but even just hitting a 5-drop, looking at the top 5 and getting to cast a spell with mana value 5 or less is really good. And really at any mana value except for 2, except for 1, has a bunch of hits. Even at 2, you could hit another 2-mana spell. There's plenty of them. At 3, you can be hitting all these 2-3-mana spells. Off the top, potentially only get to look at the top 3, but then once you get to 5, 6, 7, Sunbird's Invocation is just so fun that I keep it in the deck. Targeted removal, there's a Chaos Warp, which is a homage to the original Chaos Group Hog theme of the deck. And then I really hate Chaos Warp though. But there's Chaos Warp. Does hit any permanent, so rate it as you will. I don't even like playing it. I've seen it go wrong so many times, but it's fun. You can also target yourself, I suppose. And then Evil Twin is, I guess, could be pretty mean if you copy someone's commander. Evil Twin is 2 blue and a black for a 0/0 creature shapeshifter with, you may have Evil Twin enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield except for it gains blue, black, tap it, destroy target creature with the same name as this creature. So if you hit someone's commander with it, copy a commander with it, you just can pay 2 mana, blue and a black, and tap it to destroy that creature. Pretty mean. But it might not even be good enough. Who knows these days? You can always tell the evil one by the dagger he's sticking in you. Okay. And I guess Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh can act as targeted removal, but it's 7 mana. And hopefully that's not even what you're doing. Hopefully you're plussing and getting a card from player's library. Board wipes, there's Ingaruk's Wake, which is all creatures you don't control, creatures and planeswalkers you don't control, so that's pretty good. And Doom Blast, you can save one of your creatures and destroy the rest, so those are the ones that are in here. Doom Blast even made it into Painbow, so that seems like just sort of the natural inclusion for a 5-color deck to run as a board wipe. And then Overwhelming Forces, I know it's not a board wipe, but it says destroy all creatures target opponent controls, so sometimes that's good enough. Oftentimes I think there's probably one person with a lot of creatures on the board, or at least some, even just one big one. If it has hexproof or something, you're destroying all the creatures, so as long as you can target the opponent, you can get around not indestructible creatures, but hexproof creatures, something like that. Then the surprise I win card, I guess it's Maze's End. It's not much of a surprise, but it's hard. I've never done it. I don't expect to do it, but it is there. Sometimes the game goes long. And it also is pretty good at triggering landfall because you return it to your hand, search for a gate, and put it onto the battlefield. That doesn't count as your land from hand for a turn, so you can trigger Tatiova twice, or maybe in the future include some more landfall things, and I guess Tatiova is sort of the only synergy with playing more than one land per turn, but it can do that. Then I also think Clone Legion and Grave Betrayal are good sort of surprise I win cards. Can make a very swingy game. And then, of course, Grave Betrayal makes these board wipes a lot better, and everyone else's board wipes really good for you. Or it could make it where if you happen to have a large board state that other players don't want to cast a board wipe, because if the board wipe causes creatures to die, then they're going to come onto the battlefield under your control with a +1/+1 counter at the beginning of the next end step, and also be zombies. So then the outro, I am really happy with the deck right now. I like the Gates theme cards. They're funny. It's super janky. As I alluded to earlier, I do believe that the deck would have a great future as a landfall type deck with Scape Shift, Crucible of Worlds, Maze's End, maybe be able to pull off Maze's End, or making Azusa a lot better, and putting in landfall decks, whatever you want, Scoot Swarm, whatever the good ones are nowadays, Felidar Retreat, whatever. So I think the deck could definitely be a landfall deck, but that's an entirely different deck in my opinion. That's just a landfall deck, and you can do that with any lands. It doesn't need to be gates. And then with the deck the way it is now, with Joda, Archmage Eternal still at the helm, I know that I like keeping this deck around because I just look forward to slotting in any big giant spell into this deck. Whenever a card comes out that's big and giant and ridiculous, I know that I have a place to put it. If I open a Nezahal, for instance, I just know that it goes into this deck immediately. So I like having a home for all the big splashy stuff, and also having a place where this suite of cards can be run, because I really like the Protector of the Crown, indestructible protection from creatures combo. And that's it. That's the deck for now. So definitely let me know in the comments if you have a Gates deck and what yours looks like. I think you can do it lots of different ways. In the similar decks portion on Goldfish, it's based on the commander, not the Gates theme. So I really do want to know if you have a Gates deck, what your Gates deck looks like. And I guess the very last thing here that I will mention is that somehow I nailed the mana base without really mathing it out recently. So all the gates, and then I slotted in the multicolored lands that I had on hand that I felt like were in the correct order and the way, or the correct ratio. And the way that I math it out is by counting all the colored mana symbols, then finding their percentage, and then counting the number of ways I can make that mana for sure. So for instance, with the new gates, like Sea Gate, say, it says add blue or 1 mana of the chosen color. I only counted it as blue. I don't know what the other one I'm going to pick at the time is, but it for sure can make blue. So I only counted those. The other ones I guess I just figure are going to be a wash because I'll pick the one that I need at the time. But the number of lands that can tap, or the number of ways I can make that specific color of mana, then and take the percentage of those, and it comes out pretty good, where I'm making the most green out of everything, which is important because green is early. I need green early for sure to fix the mana. And then pretty much just nailed it. I don't know. I guess, if anything, there's a little more red than... There's only 10 red pips in the whole deck. So, maybe, I guess if I'm making cuts or swaps for the mana, I'll probably consider things like Spire Garden and Stomping Ground, things that make red in only one other color. I did make sure to have, if it made red, that it also made one of the more popular colors. So green and blue are easily the most popular, tied actually for the number of pips, because I was like, Seagate Restoration has 3 blue mana symbols in it. So we'll see what the deck does in the future, but I'm going to run it for a while like this, and hopefully we get to play it together sometime on Spell Table or whatever. Definitely subscribe to YouTube if you're listening to this. It's probably hard to follow along with. I don't know how to solve that for now for deck tech type podcast episodes. I do put them up as audio on Substack, but definitely subscribe to the YouTube for the video version of the MTG Homerow Podcast. That's the main thing that's going up on the YouTube channel right now. That's youtube.com/@MTG Homerow with the new handle version of the URL on YouTube. You can come by the stream. It's twitch.tv/MTG Homerow. Follow on Instagram and Twitter at MTG Homerow, and then subscribe to the Substack for more articles. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm thinking of an etymology series, so I'm really excited about that. Please comment if you have any words in Magic that you want to know some etymology background on. And then more decks. Definitely going to run through all the paper decks eventually. And on Instagram and Twitter. It's just a good way to connect. So hit me up there, and we'll see you in the next episode of the MTG Homerow Podcast. All right, bye-bye.